So the first part, predict, maybe I would like to change this to describe, because I think the word predict allows you to be like, well, I can be wrong. I just happened to predict it wrong. Describe is a better word. What is that 1/4 going to do? We're going to use short form here when we write things. Right? Amplitude is 1/4. And you could say that is a vertical compression by 1/4, right? What about the 3? This is going to be a horizontal compression by 1/3. You want to be careful not to say the period is 3, because the period is going to be 2 pi over 3. But that's, when we're describing it, we could describe that as a horizontal compression of 1/3 the pi over 6. Horizontal translation, pi over 6 to the left. And finally, this will be a vertical translation to up. Excellent. So that's describing what's going to happen. Now, if we're going to sketch this, and I'm going to sketch it for 1 period, because for the most part, that's what you're going to be asked to do. Sketch for 1 period, put arrowheads on the end. So I'm going to start that way. Then I'm going to show you what it would look like if you did graph it from -2 pi to 2 pi and ended it there. Because technically, if they tell you only graph it from -2 pi to 2 pi, they don't want arrowheads on the end. Continue, and they want it to stop exactly where it's going to stop. So we're going to look at both of those things. For the most part, you're going to start by just graphing it forever. So we're going to use our DABC technique. Should be some sort of thing to remember this, some sort of action. The football fans. Okay. So we're going to start with our center line. It's been moved up 2. So our center line is going to be right here at 2. From that center line, you can mark your maximum and your minimum. We have a really tiny amplitude here, don't we? It's 1/4. So what is our maximum going to be? (2.25), and our minimum? 1.75. So it's really been compressed vertically. So we've done our D value. That was our center line. Then we did our A value, which we used our amplitude to find our maximum and our minimum. Now we're going to use our B value. Our B value is going to help us find our period. Our period in this case is going to be 2 pi over 3. So graphing 2 pi over 3, I make a mark anywhere. And then I'll graph 2 pi over 3. Where does a coast graph start? Oh, I have to divide it into 4 equal sections. So 2 pi over 3, then we divide it into 4 equal sections. Half of that would be pi over 3. Half of pi over 3 would be pi over 6. 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, or pi over 2. So we divide it into 4 equal sections. So we've done everything for the DAB. Now we graph it before we do our transformation left or right or up. Left or right. This is a coast graph. Where does a coast graph start? At a maximum. So it's going to start at our maximum. Then we go through each of our 4 sections to the center line, to the minimum, back to the center line, back to the maximum. Just draw it temporarily. This is our graph temporarily. And we want to shift this pi over 6 to the left. So we've got a mark on our grid already how much pi over 6 is. So pi over 6 to the left, can you see that that would be the same amount in that direction? And now we can take each of these points and move it over that amount. So often on your final exam, the final exam will say, graph the following for at least one period. And what we've done here is we've shown one period, because that's how we started. When we drew our green graph, and then we shifted it, we've drawn one period. Now, if we were asked to draw this from negative 2 pi to 2 pi, and we're going to do that right underneath just to get a sense, I would probably still, as part of my work, do exactly what we did. Graph the whole thing to see what it looks like. And now for graphing it from negative 2 pi to 2 pi. Well, I'm going to put my axes starting right in the middle. Y-axis, x-axis. I'm going to mark 2 pi over here and the same distance, negative 2 pi over here. How does this scale relate to the scale that we drew to start with? Notice that when we started to draw a graph, we marked 2 pi over 3 on our graph because that was one period. So now, where would 2 pi over 3 match up along here? Well, that's just taking, there we go. That's just taking 2 pi and dividing it into 3 equal sections. Does that make sense? That if I look at 2 pi here and divide it into 3 equal sections, that this would be 2 pi over 3. This would be 4 pi over 3, and the same thing over here. I could divide it into those equal sections. So this is going to give us a sense for our scale, because what we graphed here above, we graphed just this little section right here. A little bit less than 2 pi over 3. And so we can start in the same way. We can mark our center line at 2, all the way along here. We know that it's going up to 2.25 and down to 1.75. We had this divided into 4 equal sections. So now each of these can be divided into 4 equal sections. And if you want to label the one section that we did before, you can. And I'm going to label this negative pi over 6 as well. So we're not going to do the green dotted one with the shift because we've already done that above. What do we know? We know where it starts. We know that it started at a maximum, but that maximum has been moved pi over 6 to the left. So this is our starting point. And then it went down to here, down to a minimum, back to the center line, back to the maximum. And you could keep going all the way through. And this is not going to be perfect, but it's going to give you a sense for what the graph looks like. Now, I went too far, right? Because if it's exactly to 2 pi, we would have to figure out where each of these dots ended up. and figure out exactly where it stops. So it's tedious. Can you see you'd have to do all of those dots if you wanted to be really accurate all the way through? So for the most part, when we're graphing, we're going to be graphing just one period, okay? And then put our arrowheads on there to show that it continues on forever. If they give you a specific domain or specific range, I'm okay with you just drawing one period, but that is how you would go about doing it for a specific range. You would have to figure it out, draw it all out from 0 to 2 pi, but this is much easier to start with this one. So we're going to work on some of these for a bit. 3, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And in number 11, you're going to have to remember to factor out the b value. Yay!